So one of the things we all can do more of, which will help move the needle, is just make it a topic of normal conversation rather than something that we have to fight over. Because if we can all agree it's a problem, then we can start to figure out, okay, well, if it's a problem, what can we do about it? Let's figure it out.
I think I also am kind of grounded in those perspectives of, we need to, whatever we do to address climate change and everything, we need to think about, alternative livelihoods and how we're really meeting those people where they are in that, that transition, whatever that looks like, and kind of understanding their underlying concerns or resistance or whatever. And that it's not that they're evil people, those were my next door neighbors, parents of my friends, everything else. But that, it was I think a good understanding of maybe where these people are coming from, while also kind of being immersed in this like environmental perspective and everything else with my family and with my schooling and everything. So
I guess the way I like to approach that conversation is actually going back to sort of a public health standpoint and telling them that yes, there is a conversation about it. 99% of the scientific community acknowledges that climate change is real, is happening, and et cetera, et cetera. 1%, okay, maybe 1% doesn't. And so say, you had, a pain in your stomach and you went to see the doctor and they're like, it's a tumor. You had better get surgery. If you get surgery, you'll be fine. If you don't, you'll die. You're like, I want a second opinion. So you go to a second doctor, you get the same answer. You go to 100 doctors and 99 of them say, it's a tumor. If you get surgery, you'll be fine. If you don't, you'll die. And the other one's like, go home, sleep it off. Like, which way would you choose? And so I guess that's the way I approach that conversation.
I had someone tell me once that one of the great ways to talk about climate is to think about one of your greatest passions in life. So for example, one thing I can use is to say that I really care about babies and that's why I care about climate change, and sort of wait for the person to come back with what does that have to do with climate change question, and then you can sort of talk about the effects that are happening to babies. We have a friend who starts out saying, I really love pasta, and that's why I'm concerned about climate change, because he's Italian, he loves pasta, and he knows that the climate change is actually really affecting the quality of the wheat. So it's just a way to get a foot in the door.
Working with climate, as with any big project, takes a lot of commitment to keep going, even when it gets sluggish. And it will get sluggish. And sometimes you'll be talking to somebody and they won't get what you get, or they take the evidence that you have and change it to fit what makes them feel comfortable. Because fighting climate, like anything, like equality or disparities in healthcare, that makes other people feel uncomfortable. So you have to be able to sort of take a step back sometimes and recharge and just keep going, and recognizing that the more you're moving forward, even if it's a little bit and a little bit, it'll get that. It's like a snowball, it starts really small and it takes a while to get down the hill and it gets bigger and bigger.
That's a road I'm still figuring out how to navigate. And I think what I've found helpful in this and any subject is sort of approaching it from a common ground standpoint of, we can all see that the skies are clouded with smoke right now, or that this has been the hottest weeks any of us remember, and things like that. And not necessarily using language that people might find inflammatory in this day and age, but just really drawing it back to the effects that we can all relate to on a daily basis, and highlighting that it's abnormal. Anyone of any age now knows this is abnormal. You can be 10 years old or 90 and know that this is not how things used to be. And so I think just really driving that home.
We're reaching out to state legislators and trying to start conversations and find some common ground and say, please come to the table to talk about this. This is extra challenging in these very divisive times, but I also choose to have hope that that we can find common ground.
My approach is, well, what can we agree on? You know, what do you see going on? What do you see as a solution? Okay, how do you think that will impact you?
Especially in a state like Montana, is just to be willing to communicate and to be willing to communicate with a variety of people. And not everybody, I'm not the person for everyone to talk to, because I might not have things in common, or I might not be in their tribe or their group or recognized, as somebody that they're going to listen to. But I could talk to someone who maybe could to talk to them.
You have to approach it in a really systemic way. And you have to think about, why do people in the state oppose climate action when climate action is in their best interest, especially if they're farmers or ranchers or within like houses without air conditioning way out on the rangeland, where they absolutely depend on, the current climatic state staying, because if it goes, then they lose out.
If you take time to learn about your audience and the culture and beliefs of that audience, you then can be better equipped to affect change. So that's why we need to do it locally and grow globally.
I feel like a lot of times when it comes to especially the huge global climate change topic, it's such a big and global issue that having it in that big of a perspective kind of makes people overwhelmed and then not even want to deal with it at all. And so if you make it in a way that it's how it's affecting them as an individual, how it affects their loved ones, their family, their life, it's a much easier topic to grasp.
It's like I tell people, how long can you live without air? You'll go, oh, well, 3 minutes. Well, that's pretty darn important then, isn't it? Yeah. How about water? How long can you live with that? Maybe 3 days. Well, pretty darn important, right? How about food? So all these things we take for granted are essential to life, right? And I think when a person gets that and understands that and believes that, then they're going to pay more attention to the quality of it.
The most important thing you can do is talk about climate change often and across differences, with the goal of being in good relationship with a person. So not having a goal of winning an argument or changing their mind on any point, but just sharing your concerns around climate in the context of a shared value or interest you have with that person.
So sometimes you just have to say, well, again, don't talk about climate change, but talk about pollution and talk about the fires. And we can all reach common ground that it's not fun to have your kids out in smoke that's filling the air right now.
So even if we have different views, like first trying to establish some sort of form of trust and reliable relationship, and then subsequently kind of moving into maybe acknowledging smaller things like, oh, wow, it's a lot hotter this summer than last summer. And kind of roll slowly into what may be causing this versus just coming out guns blazing first. But I do really think foundationally to that is some form of relationship, some form of trust.
Building relationships is where it starts. We don't start by trying to convince anybody. Very few people are convincible. But what we can do is start a conversation, ideally where the other person is coming from or based on what their beliefs are. And being careful not to say that they're wrong because you don't agree with me, but to say, okay, let's go from there. Because there are things that all of us agree on. We just have to find them. And that's where we start to have those relationships.
The key for me is that I just have this really strong core belief that all of our futures are tied up together. So making connection and staying connected are the absolute primary goal of any conversation. Doesn't mean I always do it. And if you think of it, you can't lead someone if you can't, or maybe lead's not the right word. You can't influence someone if you can't be their friend. We're not going to influence someone if we're in a battle with them. That's not going to work. They're not going to hear our stories. Our stories aren't going to move their hearts. You have to have connection. Maybe you're not best friends, but you have to have some kind of connection and warmth towards each other as people. So I just think it's super important.
Of like tiffs and arguments in class about climate change or something else, to the point where the professor like moratoriumed both of us and we couldn't talk for the rest of the class. But through the rest of the semester, we we became really good friends after that. And so I try and keep up with those friends and can continue talking to them. And I think through the course of that semester, we both grew up a little bit in our ability to have conversations with someone who has really different beliefs, and be friends with them on a human level, and be able to respect that we have different views, different opinions, and that we can learn a little bit more about the world by listening to each other's opinions, even if we really don't agree.